Hey guys, I'm back again. I'm going to do another beer video here. This one will probably be a little shorter. Thank you for all the feedback on the IPA video. That was my first one, even though I've talked about beer on Facebook for a while and putting all my beer posts up. That was my first video, so I appreciate the feedback. Those of you, just to refresh, know me in different aspects of life. I've been studying for the Certified Cicerone program. Cicerone is kind of a sommelier, but for beer. Where I'm at, for those of you who are probably watching this that are already certified Cicerones, advanced Cicerones, I took the written test last year, got a 94, which I was really happy with. I never sat for the tasting portion yet for various reasons. The Cicerone program was struggling to get dates up because of COVID and coming out of COVID, because you have to do it in person. You do a tasting portion, all flavor and things like that. I won't go into that in this video. Then a few things happened and I couldn't sit for the test. So I'm awaiting, even though I feel I'm ready to pass it. I do all my off flavor spikes, but for those of you who didn't know me in the beer world, I've done a lot of studying over the last couple of years, and I just like to try to pass on some knowledge for you. Today's gonna be a little shorter. I just wanna talk about when you go to your local beer store, when you're purchasing beer. Just a lot of, sometimes I'm gonna give you hard facts, sometimes I'm gonna kind of give you opinions. This is kind of a mixture of the two. Ideally, when you're at your beer store, what I would suggest you do is if the beer you're choosing is offered in a can, okay, I would get in a can. And it's, cans are not like they were in the 70s and the 80s. People used to stick their nose up at cans and, say, oh yeah, I get bottles. But it's going to protect the beer the most from being light struck. And the reason why we don't want to light strike beers is if you've had Corona, which most of you have had Corona, or if you had a skunky beer, right? The aroma has a skunky aroma. The taste has a skunky taste to it. And I hate to pick on Corona, but they're perfectly clear bottles, and that's usually what we taste and smell when we drink Corona. And I got to believe Corona, to this day and age, feels that that's just part of the flavor profile of the beer. Other beers like Pilsner Urquell, which is a Czech premium pale lager, which I'm going to probably do a whole video on that because that's an iconic beer. Those used to be in green bottles, and now they're brown bottles. And you can actually get them in cans now. So you want to get cans ideally. If they don't have it in cans, the next best option is brown bottles. That's going to be the next best bet as far as keeping the light struck component away from the beer, the skunkiness. And then green bottles, which are only keeping about 20% of the sunlight out. And then clear bottles are the worst. Unless you're drinking Miller Genuine Draft clear bottles. They use a hop called Tetra hops. Because what's happening is when the light is hitting the beer, there's a reaction with the hops, and it's producing a chemical 3-MBT, 3-methylbutyl, which is, I believe, the organic chemical name. And that's what produces that skunky smell and aroma. So you want to kind of keep it out of the sunlight. So when you bring the beer home, even if you have the brown bottle, cover them up. When I do home brewing, and many of you I've asked for in the past when I was brewing like a fiend like a year and a half ago at home, I asked you for some bottles. I said they must be brown, okay, because we want to kind of keep the sunlight out. Many of you who are maybe watching this through YouTube and not Facebook are familiar with Randy Mosher. I think it's Pat Fahey. That name may sound familiar. He's a master Cicerone. I believe he's the one who told me the story on their YouTube channel about how he would drink his beer and put his hat over the beer to try to keep the sunlight out. He's maybe sitting out at a picnic table at a brewery. So that's the reason why. You want to kind of keep your beer from being light struck as much as possible. So cans are the best. Brown bottles are second best, green, and then clear bottles. And, you can get away with even brown bottles at times, or maybe even clear bottles or green bottles, but make sure they're in the cardboard box that they come in. The other thing you want to take a look at is on your beer, a lot of these cans and bottles will have either package dates, which are ideal, because if you see a packaging date, most of the time, if you keep it in a cool place, you can get a good 6 months before, real bad aging oxidation effects that happen to beer. 3 months, like I said, 3 months, 6 months if it's in a cool place, 3 months if it's not in a cool, dry place. And that's not a hard, fast date, okay? However, beer has become a little cheeky, like food products, and now they'll say, best, drink before January of 2023. So you don't really know when it's been packaged. All right, so that's maybe the second best. It's not ideal. If you're getting imports from Germany, like a German Pilsner or that premium Czech premium pale lager from Pilsner Urquell, or any European beer, you'll be lucky if you get the beer or some Belgian beer in 3 months or 4 months, okay, if there's a date of a bottling date. So the whole idea is to try to keep the beer from aging too quickly and protect it. So you bring the beer home, throw it in the refrigerator, okay, if you have a refrigerator. If you don't, cool place, maybe a basement, because heat is not the friend of beer, all right? It's gonna age the beer quicker. If you have pale beers, like something like a Heineken, all right, or you may get more of like a honey taste as it ages. I brewed a Kolsch. I love home brewing Kolsch. I brewed a Kolsch one time. I probably oxidized it a little bit when I was transferring it. Within the first month, it tasted fantastic. 4 or 5 weeks after that, it started getting that honey taste to it. If it's an amber beer, when it gets oxidized, you may get a little bit of a butterscotch, caramel taste to the beer, which is, it's still drinkable many times. It's not going to harm you, but it just doesn't taste as good as when the beer is fresh. If you have a stout or a porter, the darker the beer, you may get even like a sherry note to it, maybe a stronger butterscotch caramel type of taste to it. All right, so buy your beer. Cans are the best. Dark bottles, green bottles, hopefully try to avoid. Bring them home. If they're not going in the refrigerator, kind of keep them covered and try to keep them at as cool of a temperature as possible. One old wives' tale while I'm thinking about it is, bringing your beer home that's cold and then it goes to room temperature, then you put them back in the refrigerator, then back out. If you do that 1 or 2 times, it's not a huge deal, all right? So don't feel that's a deal breaker, or that used to be told that, oh, that's what skunks the beer. It's the sunlight that skunks the beer, okay? So again, hopefully that's helpful. When you're buying the beer, stick with those cans. Ideally, go to your local, microbrewery, because you're going to get the beer fresh as possible. And many of you, I shouldn't pick on you guys, but many of you, if you really haven't had real fresh Pilsner malt or even just regular 2-row pale malt at your local home brewery, you may even drink it and think there's an off flavor, something's wrong to it, because a lot of the commercial beer, especially from AB InBev that you get, or the beer that's been sitting in warehouses that you're buying off of your local shelf, it's not the freshest malt. So go to your microbrewery. If not, get your cans, get your brown bottles, okay? You maybe pick up on those off flavors. Or you can just experiment, take a Corona or another bottle. Maybe not, Corona's not the best idea because it may already be skunked. Stick it out in the sunlight a little bit outside. And, they say 1 minute, but give it 5 minutes and then taste it. And you'll pick up on that skunkiness that you've been familiar with from your college days of drinking. All right, guys, so I have some things planned for you on future videos. This one was just kind of short, just to try to give you a little, when you're purchasing beer and trying to store your beer properly. Maybe invest in that refrigerator too to keep the beer nice and cool. All right, have a great day, guys. Take care.